Hi there, thanks for tuning in. I've done a few magazine lookbacks but not featured Sinclair User yet. I thought I'd give them a go. I did pick up Sinclair User every now and then. I wasn't a big fan of it, but I remember buying this issue from March 1987. It's issue number 59, cost a princely £1. This is before the days of cover tape, so there's no tape on the cover, and as you can see it features Nemesis. Now, Nemesis was one of my favourite arcade games, great little shooter in the arcades, and as you can see, this issue, the cover is a kind of an amalgam between the Spectrum's loading screen and a very nice spaceship reminiscent of Buck Rogers in the 25th Century TV series from the 80s there. So, nice little cover there, a bit of an oddity, but nevertheless, I would have bought this issue, as I say, for £1, pretty much pocket money, and just to see what they thought of the game. So as you can see here, there's also a little star here advertising some details on the new Spectrum 128K+3, and down here the usual stuff, competitions, games reviewed, and the opportunity to win an orange. So maybe that's why I bought this issue. So let's get on. I never subscribed to Sinclair User, I was more of a Crash fan. I bought Your Sinclair, YS, a bit more often, but as I say, occasionally I would buy Sinclair User just because back in these days, there being no internet, there was no way of finding out information about the Speccy and the new games coming out unless you bought one of the magazines. The masthead's interesting. You've got quite a few industry movers and shakers here in Andrew Hewson, obviously the boss of Hewson, Claire Edgley, who I believe worked at Rainbird, it might have been after she worked for Sinclair User, and Rupert Goodwins, who I think worked for Sinclair. In fact, I'm pretty sure he worked at Sinclair and had a hand in the +2. So, onto the magazine, The Right Stuff. This was good because it was basically readers writing in, telling Sinclair User whether they agreed or disagreed with their reviews, so it's quite a good way of getting your name in the magazine. John Riglar's Zap Chat and some maps and general chat about games that he liked, a bit like Mealy Mangram. Right, the +3 exclusive, not really looking much like the finished model there, and these comments here made me smile a bit. Basically they just wanted a cheap disk drive, that was their main concern. I was always a bit puzzled why there was never a separate disk drive for the Speccy. I guess it was because of the demand, because even when +3 came out, disc games were a bit thin on the ground. Previews, got some games being previewed. On to the reviews. Now, one of the reasons why I didn't buy Sinclair User, and to a lesser extent Your Sinclair regularly, was because of the reviews. Basically, I thought they couldn't be trusted. Crash seemed to get it on the nose more often than not. They did get it wrong, they weren't always right, but Sinclair Users seemed to over-review a lot of stuff. They dished out these 5-star reviews like candy, really, and whilst some of them I agree with in this issue, this one in particular I'm not familiar with, so I can't comment on it. But generally, the amount of 5-star reviews, I disagree with a lot of them, and I think the reviews, if you went by them, you'd be disappointed more often than not. So this is kind of an adventure game from Infogrames, which, as I say, I don't know much about, but it looks quite colourful. That gets 5 stars, solid gold. Buy it. And on to the next page, we're on to a rather more controversial 5-star review. We've got Nemesis. Now, they got into a lot of hot water over this Sinclair User. If you look at the screenshot here, you can see in the bottom right-hand corner it says Stu. That's the name of the artist that basically made this mock-up screen. The Spectrum final version, the mountains never looked like that, and it never had 2 of these power-ups. The Speccy just couldn't handle it. And this screen here looks ridiculously busy. I mean, that doesn't even look like a proper screen, because how are you supposed to negotiate your way through here? It's ridiculous. So these were 2 screenshots. Whether he was reviewing Graham Taylor, not the final game, or not even the game at all, I don't know. I'm not sure if we'll ever get to the bottom of it. There is a very good article on this by Stuart Campbell on his website, which I urge you to Google, which tells you more about this story. But yeah, they gave it a 5-star review, and I reckon probably the game was 3 stars at the very most. It wasn't as bad as people made out, but I think Konami should have let Imagine stick to their arcade conversions. One 5-star review that I think is just about justified is Enduro Racer, which took everyone by surprise. I'm not a big racing fan, especially on the Speccy. I don't think it really struggled a lot of the time, but I really like this one. It was a really nice, fast-paced game, a lot of fun. Enduro Racer, so it well deserves its 5 stars. Right, lots of adverts. Ian Rush there. Now here's one that is the other end of the scale. EastEnders. Bit of a bizarre license this by Maxine, because I'm not quite sure what their target audience was, given that most teenage boys, young teenage boys, I doubt were watching EastEnders. But anyway, the game was absolutely lamentable. It's one of the worst major commercial releases on the Speccy, and they had a cheek to charge $9.95 for it as well. So 1 star there for EastEnders, which is probably 1 star too many. Into the Eagle's Nest, a 5-star review, just about maybe, I guess. It was a Gauntlet clone, although you wouldn't be able to tell from these screenshots because they've accidentally included screenshots from Monty on the Run, it looks like, instead. Or is it all for we to say Monty? I'm not particularly familiar with those games. So yeah, I shouldn't think Pandora, which was a label owned by Interceptor, were too happy about those screenshots being included by mistake. But just about worth 5 stars. That was quite a fun little World War II themed Gauntlet clone, that one. And then here we've got Greyfell, which looks like your standard 3D isometric game, which they also give 5 stars to by Starlight. So already we're 3 or 4 pages into the reviews, and we've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 5-star reviews already. Code Talk with a youthful but still geeky looking Steve Turner. I've interviewed Steve a couple of times for Retro Gamer, and once for an article on Graft Gold, and also for an article on Avalon and Dragon Talk, which, in my opinion, along with Quasatron, are probably his best games, or certainly on the spectrum anyway. So there's a nice little Code Talk chat with Steve. A couple more 5-star reviews. Shadow Skimmer is a Sinclair User classic. It was a pretty good shooter, actually. Some very nice graphics, but I think probably 5-star is overrating a little bit. I think long term you wouldn't get too much out of Shadow Skimmer, but it did look really nice, that's for sure. One that I definitely don't think is right is Shockwave Rider. It's got its fans, but 5 stars for this, I think even its fans would say that's probably a bit too much. I reckon 3 stars at the very most, maybe even 2. Cat Trap, which was the Genesis competition winner from Crash, a rival magazine, of course, for Sinclair User, gets 4 stars out of 5. It was an idea that was interesting, but at the end of the day, the type of game was quite well. It was not exactly original. It was just a scrolling kind of shooting type game, and it was quite frustrating as well. So 4 stars for that is a bit overrating it. Maelstrom, one of the last of Ocean's original games, was quite fun, probably 3 stars on the nose. The adventure building system and characters, a couple of utilities there. Letters pages, very popular of course, the only way for readers to interact with each other in these days. A top 20. Now unlike Crash, I think this went on sale, so if we look at this, Gauntlet is at number 1, followed by Ollie and Lisa, or Lisa have they got here, Super Soccer, Footballer of the Year, Paperboy, The Great Escape, Cobra, Trivial Pursuit, Space Harrier, and 180 rounds off the top 10. So that looks like it's definitely done on sales to me. Some very good games there. Ollie and Lisa was a pretty decent budget game. Obviously, they always sold quite well, those games. One thing I will draw your attention to is Footballer of the Year, which I thought was quite a novel one-on-one type footy game where you took a career of one footballer. It was quite different from a lot of the other football games. And I give it just 1 star out of 5. I mean, it's not amazing, but I don't think it's worth only 1 star out of 5. So it does make you wonder sometimes what goes on with these reviews. A few other budget games and big name games and compilations down there. So there you go. That's the charts. A few extra little charts and screenshots. Some more offers. £5 off Star Glider. Ace of Aces. Never played that, but it gets 4 stars, as does the Battle of Britain. Sorry, no, that gets 3 stars. Battle of Britain. So a nice couple of war games. Rana Rama, might have done Steve Turner injustice, but this was a really good game as well from him. Sort of, it got accused of being a Gauntlet clone, but actually it was a lot more than that, which was a bit unfair, I think, being accused of that. That gets 5 stars. I'd say that's on the nose for once. Fist 2, though, was quite a disappointing follow-up, in my opinion, to the original, and that also gets 5. So I've lost count of how many 5-star reviews are on now. It must be 7 or 8. And here's another. I thought this game was really highly anticipated, and I thought this game was pretty poor. Again, like Shockwave Rider, it has its fans, and again, I think even most of its fans would struggle to say that it was a 5-star game. It didn't really play particularly well, Judge Dredd. So, some competitions, lots of adverts for Durell, some budget games. This is an interesting one. I remember buying How's That. It was actually a re-release from Alternative. Alternative released it in 1987, winter of 1987, when England were winning the Ashes Down Under, Mike Getting's team. And as a result, sales of it were quite strong, considering, as you can see here, how crappy it is. But you could redefine the team, so you could have yourself as like the number one all-rounder in the world, which was quite fun. Sinclair User poster there, Nemesis. We've got background noise here, which I think is about how games are made. So that's quite interesting. That's quite a novel feature. I don't remember the other magazines doing that. Some more reviews. Any more 5-star ones? Doesn't look like it. So you've got Bazooka Bill getting 4. They Call Me Trooper getting 3, and Legend of Cage getting 2. I'd say probably Legend of Cage is best out of those 3, but it gives the lowest score. Pedestrian coin-op conversion. They're probably not too wrong there. Another 5-star review, Little Computer People gets 5 stars. I'm never a particular fan of these type of games. Always found them a bit pointless, a bit like the Sims games. But that gets 5 stars. Hewson's Helpline, there he is. Lots more reviews. They're really starting to lose me here. Agent Orange, 4 stars. That was an okay game, I seem to remember. But Jailbreak, I remember being really, really poor on the Speccy, and that gets 5 stars. I mean, to be honest, the arcade original wasn't great. 5 stars for that, bloody hell. And then you've got Wib Stars here, which gets 1 star ANF. Don't remember them advertising much, ANF. Not that that's obviously got anything to do with it at all. BMX Simulator doesn't actually get a score there, but going by the comments, I don't think it would have been too bad a score, probably 3 or 4 stars. I quite like BMX Simulator. I thought that was quite fun. Conversion of the Commodore 64 game, of course. Falcon Patrol gets 1 star. Megabucks, never heard of that, but it's a Firebird game. And Phoenix, another re-release from Alternative. Not a bad shooter, actually. So, lots more stuff. Growing Pains of Adrian Mull there. Feature on War Games. I think tabletop ones as well as computer ones. Yep. Very nice. Nice little extra. Always like reading those little extras. More competitions. Lots of competitions. A listing for noughts and crosses. So if you type all that in without making any mistakes, and assuming there's no mistakes in the printing, you'd have been able to play noughts and crosses against your Speccy. Not sure I would have bothered that. Couple of budget game reviews. You've got Rockman and League Challenge, which both get mediocre scores. Gordo's Helpline, which was basically a tips page for venture games. Outlands. This was always interesting reading about other bits and pieces. Crash didn't do this so much until a bit later in its life, but this was always fun reading about what sci-fi and comics and stuff were out. Lots more competitions, some adventure game reviews. You've got Apache Gold here, which was made with the graphic adventure creator from Incentive by Peter Torrance, I believe it was written. Quite a good adventure, but I always found adventure games terribly tough, and I seem to remember that one was quite difficult as well. And you've got Operation Stallion there, which gets 2 out of 5. So a little bit of help with hardware. Next month, Sinclair User, the quest continues. A bit of Arnie and nice sorceress type lady there. And of course at the back you have previews and lots of small ads and so forth before you get to the final advert for They Sold a Million 3. I used to like the They Sold a Million compilations, but in 1987 these games would have been a bit creaky. Not bad games, I would say there, but Kung Fu Master is pretty poor. But yeah, 1987, not a great compilation that, especially for 10 quid. So there you go, advert for Short Circuit. There's issue number 59 of Sinclair User. Thanks for watching, and I'll post another video soon. Cheers, bye.